Krug Show back with you on a Friday night. And who's in the house tonight? Vish Kumaran. Vish, good to see you. He's a great follow on Twitter at Vish Kumaran. And of course, Vish has his own YouTube channel, which we were just on Tuesday night. Vish, long time no see, man. How are you?
Oh, yeah, very long time, Larry. I mean, you and I now have turned this into kind of a religious thing in 2023 where we talk twice a week, and I really look forward to it every week. Ooh, that's quite the zoom in on my face.
Seriously.
Not so flattering.
We can go back here if we want.
Yeah,
Or we could even do one of these.
Perhaps.
We could even go like that. You want?
There we go. I mean, featuring Krug. I'm kind of, people know this. I've gone on this where I've had 2 days where I've had an exceptional amount of work.
Right.
And you have the day where you're just sitting and you wake up from your desk and like you showered in the morning and just the musty feeling and just kind of the musty look of just getting off of like working for 6, 7, 8 hours straight, like just without getting up, without doing anything else. That's me right now. So I got a nice jolt of energy now coming here with you, Krug. You bring that. So I heard the music. I heard the da-na-na,
seriously.
and I was ready to go.
All right. MF says you guys rock my socks. Randall Riley says prediction is Aaron Rodgers will be a Panther. Why? Well, he's cutting right into Aaron Rodgers because we entitled this, is Aaron Rodgers a viable option for the 49ers? And I bring this up because I was talking with Jordan Elliott the other day from Indy, and he had brought up that he feels like the Packers are really done with Rodgers and that they're really going to move on and that they may not even demand nearly as much as maybe they have in the past. And that it may be, you might be able to get him for a lesser sum than he was, going to be traded for, let's say a year ago, or even a couple years ago. That they really just want to get down the road and Gutekunst wants to move on. Then you mix in the fact that Rodgers has a cap number this year that's very palatable. I think it's like somewhere between 12 and 15 million, which is, a very reasonable contract. Then you have John Lynch stating what he stated about Trey Lance, that, Trey's got to play, but, we're ready to win now. Almost to say that, the 49ers can't wait around for the development of a young quarterback. And if they can't wait around for the development of Trey, does that mean that they also are a little impatient this year because of the status of Brock's elbow? I don't know, but it just made me think Aaron Rodgers is going to go somewhere. I saw Robert Saleh say that the Jets are going to probably go Derek Carr. So I'm thinking Carr to the Jets. Is Rodgers going to wind up with the Raiders? My Raider people say no, that's not going to happen, that the Raiders are going to go for a quarterback and try to use their picks to rebuild their D. What's that?
The thing that people keep saying is that the personality fit with Josh McDaniels is very questionable, so they don't want to go that route.
Ah, gotcha. So if I just said to you, Niners aside, let's just talk Rodgers for a minute. He's one of the best quarterbacks in pro football. He can pretty much determine where he goes because he's got that kind of clout. What do you think? Where's he going to go? Where do you see a home for him?
I have no clue. I'm pretty confident that home will not be the 49ers, though. I don't think Green Bay will trade him here, no matter what. So I'm pretty confident no matter what he's looking to do. We saw 2 years ago, right? I think it was Trey Wingo that reported he was looking for a trade. They thought it would be the 49ers, and then apparently the Niners asking the day of the draft, the day before they drafted Trey Lance, really pissed off and put a strain on Matt LaFleur and Kyle Shanahan's relationship. There was all kinds of things. So I don't think the 49ers would be involved. In terms of where Rodgers is going, Larry, I have no clue. I'm still going to stay strong with the Jets. I think that's what makes sense. I think that's what is kind of the best fit for both teams. But you're right. Robert Saleh was almost overly effusive in his praise of Derek Carr this week. I don't think Derek Carr has ever been praised like that in his life. So it does make you think that maybe the Jets and Carr have already kind of have a handshake deal back there.
Why do you think Rodgers? Your belief is that just Green Bay just kind of like out of just because the Niners are the Niners and Green Bay's Green Bay, that they would not make the trade to send him to the Niners.
Yeah, I mean, we have 2 years ago that's just a great example of how they refused to do it. They didn't wanna do it, right? Trey Wingo reported they thought they were gonna trade him. The 49ers made a call. Mike Silver later reported that that call that Kyle Shanahan made to Matt LaFleur really put a strain on their friendship and their relationship. I don't think Green Bay is ever gonna trade him to San Francisco, especially given that they've, faced twice in the last 4 years in the playoffs. Both of those have been losses. No, I don't see that coming.
Well, if Green Bay said we'll take Trey Lance back in return, would you make the trade?
If I'm the 49ers
Yeah.
to get Aaron Rodgers,
Yes.
yes. He's Aaron
Despite the
Rodgers.
fact that he's coming off a down year and he's an older player.
If I still look at how good Aaron Rodgers is and say if the 49ers have Aaron Rodgers next year, they're going to win the Super Bowl. That's how I see it. And if you have something that helps you win the Super Bowl next year, why would you worry about 2024, 2025, 2026, all of that and beyond? But I can't see why would Green Bay want Trey Lance when they have Jordan Love?
Well, let me ask you this. Do you believe in Jordan Love? He's barely played. He had one touchdown this year.
I thought he looked good this year when he played against in Philadelphia. And then if you actually watch the preseason, he looked pretty horrible in his first preseason, but how he looked in the preseason this year was pretty promising. I don't know if I believe in Jordan Love, but gosh, if we're talking about sample size and writing off quarterbacks, how can we write off Jordan Love at this point, Larry? There's still talent there. Maybe there's something. Who knows? He looked good
Yeah.
against Philadelphia.
No, I'm not writing him off. I'm just saying that I don't think that Jordan Love has achieved enough that if you're Green Bay, you wouldn't be interested in Trey Lance. I don't think if Jordan Love is like, that box is checked. All right, on to the next. It's like, no. He
Right.
might be good. He might be shitty. I don't think. And the same thing can be said for Trey, I guess. Right.
Right.
But I just think that that would be. I don't know that I would want to make that trade if I'm the Niners, because I think that even if you win the Super Bowl, you're still giving away a 20-year-old, 21-year-old Trey Lance. You could be giving away an all-time great if you believe in him. So when you say that you would make that trade, is it that you don't believe in Trey Lance?
It's not about whether I believe in Trey Lance or whether I don't believe in Trey Lance. I look at the 49ers as a team with a clear window that's right now. They have a core of players that's capable of winning the Super Bowl. They have not done it 3 out of 4 years, pretty much because of quarterback injury or quarterback play or a mixture of the both. If I could give myself a chance with this core, like when Trey Lance is good, I don't know if the 49ers will have a core that's capable enough to compete around him. It's not anything that has to do with Trey Lance or belief in Trey Lance. It has more to do with just the opportunity present. The NFL to me has always been a win now league. It's always been a seize your opportunity when you have it. Planning for the future is very difficult given the attrition of the sport and the variability of the injuries that come with the sport. You never know what year is going to be your opportunity. And therefore, I feel like with the 49ers, they've already let opportunities slip away because they've had the most talented team multiple years now in the last 4 years and been unable to capture a Super Bowl during that time. If you're talking about getting a quarterback the caliber of Aaron Rodgers, I know he had a down year. I know he's a weird ass person. He's still a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, and he still far outplayed all the quarterbacks on the 49ers roster, given what he had to work with in Green Bay this year. Gosh, I would still say yes, take Aaron Rodgers, solve the other problems later, win a Super Bowl now, and everything else can be good and dandy later. Look at the Rams. They have to completely retread and rebuild this whole thing apart. But guess what? They got that one Super Bowl in this time period, which it does make a difference. When we're talking about teams, the Rams' legacy is built, right? McVay, Stafford, Aaron Donald, that core of players, they have something to now show for. They have a legacy that, the 49ers may not have if they just lose this period of just winning, NFC champ or winning a few playoff games and never winning a Super Bowl.
It's an interesting question to me because I can see it both ways. I can see where Green Bay would have interest in this because maybe Jordan Love's the quarterback of the future, but maybe he ain't. And I think Trey is a good enough prospect where I think they would be interested. The 49ers would put an enormous amount of pressure on the 49ers to win the Super Bowl this year. And if they didn't, or even if they did, what if Trey Lance goes to Green Bay and in a very solid organization gets the development that he needs and becomes a 3 or 4 time Super Bowl winner, and all of a sudden Trey Lance is winning
3
games.
or 4 time.
What if I'm just saying, what if Trey Lance becomes Brett Favre? So
that's the risk. So
I guess my question is,
Larry,
do you believe in Trey or do you not believe in Trey? If you do believe in Trey, really believe, then you're talking about a 21-year-old franchise quarterback that you're trading for a 37-year-old franchise quarterback coming off of his worst year.
I don't think it's that binary because there's a timeline that also fits. It's not, do I believe in Trey? Do I not believe in Trey? I actually don't know what to believe in Trey, to be honest. There's a lot of things I like.
And your default would be to not believe, right?
No, my default is to look at the time period that the 49ers have. And if you can give me an option that I look at as more of a guarantee today, I'm going to take that option. Not because it's a belief in Trey Lance or a disbelief in Trey Lance, because I think the 49ers are ready now. And I'm not sure whether Trey Lance is now. Ready now. Now, I think he could be ready in the long term, 100%. Maybe he could even be ready next year. I don't know. I have no clue. But I'm going to take the sure thing over the unknown for sure. 100% anytime.
Well, it's weird, though, because one guy has got a future and the other guy's got a past and a very short future. What do you think the future of Aaron Rodgers' NFL career really is? What do you think he's got left, Fish? He's got 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. Where are you on the shelf life left of Rodgers?
I'm still quite there. I think he's not as tough as he used to be. Like, to me, last year was his Tom Brady 2019 kind of moment, in the sense that he can no longer just stand in the pocket. He's a little bit gun shy. You have to protect him a certain way and you have to give him a run game. But I think if you do something for him like the Bucs did for Tom Brady, which is give him protection, give him great weapons, he can still do a lot with a lot. And I still really believe that. I mean, this is a guy that just won back-to-back MVPs a year ago. This is a guy who had 2 of the greatest statistical quarterback seasons back-to-back. This is one of the greatest quarterback stretches the last 3 years we saw from him in NFL history. So I still think there's something there. And I do think the 49ers would give him, in terms of weapons, in terms of protection, in terms of a defense, in terms of a run game, resources that he's never had in Green Bay. Nonetheless, as deep as we can get into this conversation, I think there's zero chance Green Bay would ever trade him to San Francisco. I don't think this is even a plausible thing this offseason. I think Rodgers is going to be Jets or Green Bay. I'm not predicting anywhere else. He either stays in Green Bay or he's
You think he's going to come back to Green Bay?
Possible, yeah.
Wow. There's a lot of people think that he's moving on. That Gutekunst wants to move on almost at any price. We'll see. We'll see. That one's interesting. I can't picture him in Vegas. I can't picture him with the Jets. He said
you
he
can't
wasn't
picture
coming
the
to the
Jets.
Niners.
Interesting. You don't think the Jets is a possibility at all?
No, because I think their line's bad. I just don't think that he wants to go there. It seems like the Jets are circling on Derek Carr. And maybe I'm wrong. Manny says, I hope we get him, but what about Tampa? Tampa
has no cap space.
Yeah.
Tampa's not even part of the quarterback conversation. To me, Tampa, them winning this quarterback competition or this quarterback situation would be getting Baker for cheap. Because to me, they don't have a chance at anybody given where their cap is.
Kevin F., this is kind of interesting. By the way, Tom Pierce says, like and subscribe, everybody. It really helps the show. Kevin F. says, Joe Lacob dismissed the 2-timeline plan yesterday with Tim Kawakami. Dismissed it? What does that mean, dismissed it? Does that mean he's admitting it's a mistake? Or dismissed that they were actually on 2 timelines? Or dismissed it as valuable? I'm not sure exactly what you mean. I need a little bit more on that. Um, this is interesting. MF says, "Did you guys read Matt Barrow's Q&A with Adam Peters?" I did. And Adam Peters says that the deepest that he thinks there's only like 50. This is kind of interesting, Vish. He says that the Niners really only have 15 guys that they have a first round grade on. And I believe that because I think there's I think I can see that as well. When I go through it, I see about 10 to 12 really good first rounders, and then I see a big drop off, and everybody you get after like 12 or 13 could be the same guy you get in the 50s. I that's the way I think the NFL draft is shaped. But he said that, and then he went on to say that he felt like D tackle, D end, and tight end are three of the deepest positions in this draft. And if that is indeed the case, that's
All three
great news for the
needs.
49ers because I think they need players at all three of those spots.
I agree, and I was just skimming right through it right now. I saw the comment in there pretty early, so I was like, "Shoot, let me try to read as much as I can." And I kind of sped skim it right there as you were talking, but I was mostly listening to you. Yeah, I did, I guess, see it now, and like you said on the 15 player thing, I did see that quote. I saw Daniel Jeremiah also made a similar quote about this draft, talking about how after the first 15, 16 players in this draft, there's not a lot of guys that you look at as cinch, like, yeah, those are first round picks. A lot of guys then go into the gray area of they grade out. There's a bunch of people that grade out the save as kind of middle round players. So, yeah, it's definitely interesting. And it's kind of a decent spot to be in, to be honest, if you're the 49ers, because in these kinds of drafts, if you're sitting there with a bottom half of the first round pick, which is what we presume and what likely the 49ers pick would have been had, or not what we presume, what the 49ers pick would have been had they had a first round pick, you're kind of in a tough spot because there are very few players that people are actually going to come up and trade for. And you don't want to overdraft somebody in the first round in that situation. So I guess in a lot of ways, the Niners aren't necessarily blessed because having a first round pick is better than not having one, but this isn't actually the ideal draft to have that later in the first round pick. I actually think last year's draft was a little bit more loaded in that area on guys that you could get as opposed to this one. Yeah.
Um, it was an interesting piece for sure. Where do you think? Oh, by the way, the other big news of the day, if there is big news of the day, is that the 49ers, it sounds like, according to at least The Athletic, Jeff Howe of The Athletic, they now say Brock Purdy is going to have his surgery on the elbow is going to be this week or next week, I should say.
Yep.
Um,
I just read that as well. I'm glad. Okay. Now I'm fully caught up. We're on the same page.
what do you think? What do you think? I mean, obviously, this is the doctor's timeline, and whatever timeline fits the player is the timeline they ought to choose. If it jives exactly with the Niners timeline, that should all be secondary. What do you think now that you know that the surgery is coming up? As
It
far
doesn't change.
as just far as how you view the quarterback room going forward.
Yeah, it doesn't change much. I still think first Trey Lance needs to get healthy, be fully cleared, be ready to go. He's also coming off of a very serious injury. And then with Brock Purdy, same thing. Um, I guess I'm a little bit more worried than others, given the fact that both players are having to overcome such in injuries. Obviously, you don't want to necessarily I guess I don't necessarily think it's I think a lot of people look at injury recovery and whatever and be like, yes, that guy's just gonna come back and be fully there. And I would like to think that, and I'm hoping that for the player and the person, but I also would like to actually see them back and see how they are when they're back. So in terms of the state of the 49ers quarterback room, to me, it's going to always remain in a state of flux until one of these guys, until we know that there's a healthy quarterback on this roster, he's ready to go, whatever. And so if that guy is Trey Lance, I'll be a little bit more okay. And then I'll be a little bit more like thinking about what's happening with Brock Purdy. And then if they clear Brock Purdy too, then I'll be very, very pleased with the state of the quarterback room. But until we get to that point, which is long, long away, as long as they have 0 healthy quarterbacks, it remains a state of flux to me.
Yeah. I mean, that right now there's just a lot of unknowns. Free agency is going to begin not that long from now. 49ers are 18th in the NFL in cap space, according to Over the Cap. Excuse me, their cap space is even lower at 3.3 million, their effective cap space. So there's, as far as, I don't know if they're going to be forced to, cap casualty somebody and release somebody or not, but they may not be able to re-sign all their free agents. Nick Bosa suggested that he thinks Emmanuel Mosley's coming back. It would be nice if somehow they could bring Mosley back on a cheap deal.
Who's been saying that too?
What's that?
I've been saying that for a long time. I think that's the guy they bring back. Not Mike McGlinchey, and I said no way to Jimmy Ward. You were saying Jimmy Ward.
I want Jimmy Ward back.
Yeah, I think there's no way he comes back, but I think Emmanuel Mosley, good chance.
Did you see Jimmy Ward liked a picture on Twitter today of him wearing a Texans uniform?
Jimmy Ward's on Twitter?
Or maybe it was Instagram. Might have been IG.
I can't see that one happening too. They have their own. They don't have a Jimmy Ward, but they have their version of a Jimmy Ward style player who looked good as a rookie in Jalen Petrie. So, but maybe that's where he goes. I don't know.
Jimmy Ward would be the guy that I'd want to sign back just because of culture. I just think he's a culture player. But where do you think the Niners would go into the draft or free agency to fill their needs in the secondary? And that's assuming Mosley is going to come back, but let's say Jimmy isn't.
Yeah, it would be the draft, right? I think they got to pick a safety at some point in one of those middle rounds, not even as a guy that needs to start immediately, just to have some development at that position of a guy that you can maybe groom as a future starter, because they don't have necessarily that guy there, right? They got one starter in Hufanga, and I think they're hoping to re-sign the other starter as Gibson, but they don't have a young guy necessarily groomed to be the future starter at free safety. So I think that would be a draft pick. And then the cornerback position, they're actually fairly deep. I mean, Womack showed some promise at times. I think he's a gifted player. I think they should be excited. I thought Lenore was very, very positive in terms of having a depth piece in the cornerback room. Mooney Ward's obviously a top 10, 15-ish corner in the sport of football. And Emmanuel Mosley's a top 20 corner in the sport. So I think that they actually have a decent amount of depth, and I wouldn't mind if they drafted one more guy. Just same thing. Have another young guy in there that's ready to compete for the bottom of the roster with an Ambry Thomas to see who ends up staying on and who can play some special teams. But I actually don't think their secondary needs are there that far, just because they have drafted and invested so many resources and have some young players who are capable of possibly stepping up and filling the roles of the veteran players that have left their secondary over the last 3-4 years.
Let me ask you this. The one thing that we have not heard from the 49ers is anything that's really strong that supports Trey Lance as the starter. If anything, it sounds like the players in the front office are leaning towards Brock Purdy, and that's just my thought on it. There's a guy from Sports Illustrated named Jose Luis Sanchez III.
Yeah, Jose Sanchez. Yeah, of course. Great guy, really smart, really great work. Make sure, Larry, you should have him on, by the way.
Really?
I think you would really have great conversation with him. Jose is awesome, yeah.
Well, I'm glad you know him. So you feel like he's credible.
Yes, I do, 100%.
He has wrote an article on all 49ers on Fan Nation. And it's entitled, "Should Trey Lance Demand a Trade from the 49ers?" He says it's starting to look like Lance and the Niners are not a fit for each other. It's been an ugly start to his career for Trey. And it says opportunity and patience with him are severely lacking from the Niners. And basically he says Lance might just be there to keep the seat warm for Purdy until he's recovered from his injury. Everything being spoken from the Niners since their season ended, whether it's the players or Kyle Shanahan or John Lynch, insinuates that Brock is the starter going forward. Nothing seems to be in favor for Lance at this point. Everyone seems to have crowned Purdy as the guy. It's starting to look like Lance and the 49ers are not the right fit for each other. And this is what he's writing.
So he's reading the tea leaves you read on Tuesday.
Right. It's
Yeah.
taking him a couple days to read the tea leaves that I read a couple days ago. But everybody reads a little faster. Some people, there's some people are Evelyn Wood, as we joke.
Right.
No,
Larry Krueger.
well, yeah, I'm exceptionally fast, Trey. Have you ever seen people who speed read?
That's what I was trying to do with the Matt Barrows Adam
But
Peters
have you ever seen
interview.
them do it with their finger vish? They're
Yeah,
just like,
yeah.
it's like, what the heck? What the heck is that? I
Right.
read a book in 45 minutes. It was 700 pages. I sped read it. I'm like, okay, let me ask you one. Who is the protagonist? Can you answer any questions at all? But what do you think? I mean, should Trey, if that is the premise and you agree with the premise that the 49ers aren't really showing Trey any love, that it seems like they've crowned Purdy as their guy and that Lance and the Niners are not a fit for one another. If that's the takeaway, do you agree that Lance should demand a trade?
No. And the reason I say no is because no matter what, even if it is that way, he's getting a chance this offseason just because things have opened up. And because he's getting that chance this offseason, honestly, Larry, I don't think it matters if they feel that Brock is ahead or that Brock's the guy right now because Brock's not going to be healthy. And Trey's going to have a really nice opportunity through the first part of this offseason, the first part of camp, to prove everybody wrong and change everybody's mind. And I think that if he comes out and kills it, he can change everybody's mind. Like, I think in some ways, he's still in control of his destiny here. The only way I would suggest that Trey Lance request a trade I would, first of all, I would suggest the 49ers don't trade him on any account because it just doesn't make sense to me. But let's say he asks for a trade. The only scenario that I can imagine that is if he feels like no matter what he does, the 49ers are not going to give him a chance. Like he could go out and play like Josh Allen and the 49ers would still stick with Purdy because there's some attachment there from either the coaches or the players. That's the only reason I think he should think trade. But otherwise, he should have 100% confidence in himself and his abilities, the abilities that got him to be the third pick in the draft. And with an injured Brock Purdy this offseason, he's going to get his opportunity once he recovers and he's fully healthy. And if he kills it, I feel like he can change everybody's mind. I feel like if he goes out there and plays great, it's Larry. How many times do we have to keep saying it? Trey Lance playing great this offseason is the best case scenario for the 49ers. It takes the pressure off of Purdy, takes the pressure off of his recovery, and it makes the 49ers feel awesome that their third overall pick quarterback is still who they thought he was. So that's best case scenario. And I still think there's an opportunity for that to happen this offseason. So to me, the only way you request a trade if you're Trey Lance is if you feel like there's not a fair chance here. And the 49ers don't seem like a team to me that wouldn't allow two players to compete to find out who's the best possible option there.
The nice thing is Trey has said everything I've heard from Trey is totally right on the money. It's just like, hey, you know
Right.
what?
Exactly what I
It's
said, right?
respectful. It's it's understanding that Brock has had an opportunity, ran with it, and that Trey's a little bit chasing this from behind. And it sounds like all he wants is an opportunity to compete for the starting job. Who could ever fault him for that? Right?
Right. And I think he's kind of getting that defaulted opportunity, right? Because no matter what, it seems like he's going to get the reps this offseason. And that really gives him a great chance to I mean, he never lost the starting job, right? He got hurt and Brock seized his opportunity. This gives him a great chance to come back and take the job that he never lost. Again, like you said, Larry, he's saying all the right things. He's saying exactly what I'm saying. The only way that I would go with that line of thinking is if he feels like no matter what he does, the 49ers are just in Brock Purdy's corner and that's that. But I don't feel that it's that way at all. I do think he's ahead. I do think that there's obviously not been the commitment perhaps I expected to Trey Lance this offseason thus far. But I still wouldn't count him out. I still can't count him out.
If Brock won the starting job, do you think it would be fair to the organization for Trey to demand a trade in season?
Maybe I don't think that request would be granted.
I know. I mean that would be my concern if I was Lynch. Is like I just don't want to. I don't want a real public, strong, divisive trade demand in early September
The
when
the
I have
thing
like
though,
3 weeks to do something.
I
I
wouldn't
would
be
hate
that
that.
scared of that demand though, really, Larry, because his leverage is pretty much non-existent at this point. He hasn't played at all. And so that puts him in a really, really difficult spot in terms of where his leverage is in terms of asking for a trade. I don't know if that you necessarily fear that because I don't think that would get as dramatic or as ugly as one would expect just because Trey Lance is the entire conversation about Trey Lance right now in some ways is hypothetical just because we have 4 games in 2 years. My gosh, I've never talked about a guy this much when we only have 4 games to even talk about. Like, this is unreal.
um, Are you a guy that takes a peek at the combine? Everybody's a little different. Some people literally love the combine and watch it. Other people just are totally cued in to the results of the combine and they want to look at the results on paper and they want to analyze it. Other people just want to forget it altogether and just be like, you know what? I don't want to deal with it because, at the end of the day, you know, it's about how you play football. It's not about what these guys do in Indianapolis. And you can only make mistakes from evaluating the combine. How do you look at the combine?
I like it. I like watching it every year. I wasn't able to watch it as much this year just because work kind of I was caught up a little bit. But I always like watching it. I like watching the quarterbacks throw. I like watching the guys work out. It's just another part of the process. I think some people either put too much stock into it or too little. I think there's takeaways that you can have from how people perform in drills, what their athletic scores are, that can confirm certain thoughts you might have watching the player or maybe make you question or rewatch something you thought the player had, but he didn't necessarily test that way. I think it's all part of the draft process. And honestly, Larry, I enjoy the entire part of the draft process. All in all, I have a lot I can complain about it, but to be honest, it's one of the best times of the year. Obviously, it's one of the best times of the football off season. I don't know if I would go to the year because any part of the year that when football is actually happening is usually better than when any part of the year that football is, in the off season.
I just think it's such an interesting there's certain parts of the combine that are really interesting to me. Like, for example, let's take linebackers. The NFL has changed in recent years. The linebackers who used to be able to play in the league, who ran 4.7, can't play anymore in the league. And you need linebackers that are faster than that. And so now, give you an example. Owen Papo for Auburn ran 4.39. Trenton Simpson, linebacker from Clemson, ran 4.43. There's a number of linebackers in that 4.5 range, including guys that the Niners have met with. I think they met with Charlie Thomas, who from Georgia Tech. He ran 4.52. Pretty sure they met with Jalen Graham from Purdue. He ran a little slower, 4.64. And then you see guys that run in the 4.7s who are really productive, like Noah Sewell from Oregon. And it's weird because it's like if you run 4.7, even if you're a productive linebacker, you probably are a 2 down guy. Where if you're a legitimate 4.5 guy or faster, you might be a 3 down linebacker, greater value. To me, that's one
Yeah,
interesting spot to kind of look at, just the evolution of that position in the NFL where it's so, teams are going to like 5-2 fronts and they're using 2 stack backers to defend the entire, second level. And so those guys have got to be able to run.
yeah, no, 100%. I think that's kind of inarguable, right? The Seattle scheme even kind of got us into that direction. I mean, Bobby Wagner was what 235 pounds when he was drafted. Reuben Foster weighed what 228 pounds when the Niners picked him.
Yeah.
So yeah, 100%. I do think the 40 time perhaps is a little bit overblown. Like it has to be 4.5 or 4.6. I think the point is that there's a speed requirement, right? And the 40 time is a measure of that. There are some guys who are faster than their 40 time or maybe a little bit more explosive. So they're able to overcome because you're really never running 40 yards as a linebacker. It's really that explosiveness and acceleration to get sideline to sideline. But you're absolutely right, Larry. I mean, basically, we have what would have been safeties, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, all playing linebacker now. And it's made coverage because you need these smaller, faster players to be able to run because there's so much there's so much match coverage, right? There's so much match zone, and so you need these linebackers when these receivers, slot receivers, tight ends come into their area. They got to be able to run with them. It's so important in today's NFL, and so that's where we are.
Manny Fresh says, "Here's a donation. Kittle, Juice, McCaffrey don't want Trey. They never did." I don't know if I would agree with that. I probably wouldn't agree with that. Rob
I
C
don't
says,
agree with that.
I mean, I don't know. Like, I haven't talked to those guys about that, but I would say no. Rob C says, became a YouTube member. Thank you, Rob. Appreciate you. Thanks for becoming a member. Always get a little hand from the new members. You know, it is. I don't think I never saw any anti-Trey faction in the locker room at all. So, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's hard
Yeah,
to.
I think it's like, for example, like the George Kittle, the way he answered the question, thought was about as honest as you could have answered the question when he answered it during the Pro Bowl, right? That's the quote that made people feel this way. It's exactly how Trey Lance has talked about the quarterback situation too. Being honest about where the situation has doesn't necessarily mean you're rooting for or against anybody. In fact, Kittle was effusive in the sense that he thought Trey Lance had an immense amount of talent, and it's unfortunate for reasons not even due to his own doing. Right, it's circumstance that he's unable to be on the field and realize his potential over the last couple of years. But yeah, I don't get why people think that there's this pro or anti Trey. Maybe there is. I don't necessarily get that feeling or vibe as much. In fact, I think a lot of the divisiveness on Twitter makes a lot of people see things like, I think a lot of people look at the divisiveness between both quarterbacks and Twitter and think like that's what the majority of the fan base, or that's how people exactly are, when really that's also a small fraction of people as well, who are embellishing their point on a social media that's um, kind of made for that, right? Because of the character limit. And so therefore it's causing people to think there's 100% of people against Trey, 100% people against Brock, 200% people against this person. What I'm realizing is that I'm just 100% against everybody, apparently. So it happens. I'm just going to try to be as honest about it as possible. That's okay.
There was a great tweet today, and it said Niner Twitter discussing quarterbacks, and it was this wild brawl. Did you see that?
Right. Right.
You did
It's
see it?
unreal. I've seen a version of that tweet multiple times on Twitter.
I mean,
It's dude,
why is it?
it's
Why is it
tiring.
that people have to pick sides on quarterbacks? Why? Why? If you're a fan of the Niners, they both play for your team. They're both under rookie contracts. Neither's a free agent. They're both scheduled to be on the team. Why do people feel the need to be like, let's pit them against each other? Woo! Why?
Yeah, I don't know either, to be honest. I don't know. I think people just want to be right, or want to have an opinion, or want to have something they're rooting for either way. But the thing is, this is a process that's really, really fluid, because the greatest part about all of this is both players aren't even healthy right now. One guy needs to get surgery, and one guy is focused on his rehab to make sure that he can be fully back to 100%, so he has the opportunity to play. It's not. Oh gosh. Larry. I'm gonna get this offseason has already been the longest offseason, and we're 1 month into it. This
But
quarterback
we don't do this with other
discussion is.
positions. We don't. No, we're not sitting here going, hey, Diamador Lenore or Ambry Thomas? Which one?
I think that one's pretty obvious, is not.
Well, that one we know. But I mean, we didn't last year. At the end of last year, Ambry Thomas was better than Diamador Lenore. The end of
Playing the
last year,
49ers, yeah.
right? Or 2 years ago, I guess it was.
I thought Dante Johnson should have been the one that played at the end of last year while
You
we're
see what I'm
being
saying, though?
honest,
We
but
don't do
yeah.
that. We don't go, Danny Gray or Ray McLeod.
Danny Gray. No. Ray McLeod. No. Danny
Yeah.
Gray. No, I'm joking. Yeah, you're 100% right about that, Larry. It's
Why?
interesting how that happens. Yeah.
It's like you couldn't possibly be a fan of both guys.
Right. Yeah, I don't
Manny
know.
Fresh says back to 49ers football says a lot. I'm not sure what he's referencing there.
The comment Juszczyk made when Garoppolo came in week 2. It was
Oh.
that was not a good comment. I agree.
Oh,
I
you mean
also
about the
I
other
also
guys in
think
the
it was
locker room. I
right, but
got you.
I also don't think that it was necessarily intended that way, but you're right. That wasn't a good moment for Kyle Juszczyk, and that was not the right thing to say in the moment.
I think Kittle said it was Purdy's job to lose.
Lance said it too, right?
Yeah. Not only that, did you see John Schneider's comment to Jordan Elliott in Indianapolis about the 49ers? He's like, hey, if they didn't lose Purdy, who knows what they would have been able to accomplish? Sounds like he's a big fan. You know what's also kind of interesting is I've seen a lot of people. Chris Ballard, did you see this one today, Vish? Chris Ballard, the GM for the Colts, said, everybody talks about 40 times and height and size and speed. What you need is a guy who can just process and get the ball out quickly and somebody who can think the game and this. I mean, it's like he was saying that he wanted Brock Purdy. How's Chris Ballard? Who God knows, Chris Ballard. I would have thought Chris Ballard and Frank Reich got a Super Bowl win, but they didn't. I mean, they couldn't get it done because they haven't been able to get the right quarter. Andrew Luck retiring probably cost those guys a ring. I don't know. I don't know how you feel about the Colts.
I agree on Andrew Luck retiring. I'm a little bit stunned with you here, Larry. He's just I feel like you threw out of like 3 or 4 vague things that most GMs say they want in a quarterback, and then you went to immediately. It sounds like he wants Brock Purdy.
Well, no, it's funny. I saw a tweet that literally had the quote, had Ballard talking, and the person's reaction to the tweet who retweeted it sounds like he wants Brock Purdy. I agreed with that. And so I kind of just presented that and said that.
Okay,
Yeah, you're right.
Okay. That makes more sense. Okay, that makes more sense. I was gonna say I was a little bit confused for a second about the correlation because I was trying to register and simultaneously look for this Chris Ballard quote, and then I was like, how did we get to Purdy?
Well, somebody said it sounds like he wants Brock Purdy, and I don't know what he wants, but it is interesting that I think there'll be more smaller quarterbacks. I mean, look, heck, the year after Brock Purdy, goes from Mr. Irrelevant to one step from the Super Bowl, the first pick in the draft could be a 5'11", 190-pound Alabama quarterback. Maybe the NFL's prerequisites on size are evolving, Vish, when it comes to the quarterback, based on partly, at least, on the success that Brock had.
I mean, maybe I do think that perhaps Drew Brees, Russell Wilson,
yeah.
Kyler Murray might have gotten us into that direction. And I think Bryce Young is also kind of an outlier, right? Tua went high too recently. He's 6 feet. Baker Mayfield went 1. He's 6 feet. So I do think that we've already been in that direction. And I do think Bryce Young also, Larry, is a little bit of an outlier in the sense that every part of his game besides his size seems to be quite special, that perhaps that he could be the one guy that, can go in the top 5 despite his size.
What do you think? Do you think that Bryce Young is too small to be a star quarterback in the NFL? Because people say that he processes incredibly fast, and I'll take their word for it because I can't speak against it, right? I haven't seen him, not go through his progressions or not process fast. But the people who watch it closely, Daniel Jeremiah from the NFL Network, who I think's pretty good evaluator. I don't know.
I like him a lot personally.
Yeah, I like him a lot too. He thinks that Bryce Young is Aaron Rodgers. Talks about him like he's Aaron Rodgers. That he's that kind of a passer, that kind of a processor.
Do you think he's that gifted a thrower?
I don't see that.
I don't either.
I'm really kind of concerned about all of the quarterbacks, to be honest, at the top of this draft, Vish. I'll say what I see. I see Bryce Young as very small, and I'd be worried about his durability. Very lean. CJ Stroud, I think, is hard to evaluate because he's literally got all pro NFL wide receivers up and down. I mean, that's easily the best wide receiver core in the country that he's got. I think those receivers make him look better than he is. Will Levis is got an incredible arm. He throws rockets, but he didn't win all that much, and he threw a ton of picks, and his interception percentage sucks. And then Richardson, in some ways, I think is the best prospect of all of them in that, he's 6'3", 240, runs like the wind, great arm, but he clearly is really raw. But at the same time, if he figures it out, Richardson is a weapon, man. Richardson is, he's got arm strength, incredible foot speed. He's 240. He's yoked up. You can run him as a running back on the goal line. He's I don't know. To me, Anthony Richardson is the most intriguing. Will Levis is the guy. When I watch him throw, I think, wow, there's very few guys that throw like this guy. But he doesn't sense the rush, and he hasn't played all that well. Stroud's surrounding cast is awesome. Same with Bryce Young. I think this is a very, very difficult to handicap quarterback first round.
Yeah, I agree with you in the sense that all of them have question marks. Going back to your question about Bryce Young, I don't know if I see Aaron Rodgers, but uh, gosh, when you watch the film, to me, it's the best in terms of what the quarterback is, how the quarterback is playing the position. It's the cleanest film I've seen since Joe Burrow when I've been doing this. If he was 6'3", to me, he's the no-brainer number one overall pick. You think you have a franchise quarterback, you think you hit a home run. But does his size concern me? Absolutely, it concerns me. He's not necessarily protecting himself, too. He has a slightly recklessness to his game, which is some of the best parts of his game because he's so poised. He's so instinctive. He's so clever. He's so creative at making plays late in the ground down, but it also leads to him getting hit. So in terms of that, Larry, I do think his size is concerning. And then, yeah, I agree with you. There are concerns about the other three guys in completely different ways. If you want, I guess we could get deeper into those concerns for sure.
Well, we don't need to do a whole breakdown now. We got plenty of time between now and the draft.
Okay.
Let me ask you a couple of last ones because we're almost coming up on an hour, and I don't want to make this an endless live stream. I've been going all day. You've had a long week at work, so we'll just go a few more minutes.
Okay.
Here's a question I've got for you.
We do got to come back to this conversation at some point.
We absolutely will. We absolutely will.
Perfect. Okay.
Manny Fresh says Shanahan can't develop a quarterback. We need Aaron Rodgers. All right, there you go, Manny. Manny believes Shanahan. You know what? There's no quarterback that we can point to that Shanahan has developed, really. So, that takes live as far as I'm concerned. All right, Vish,
I agree with that. I agree.
Do you agree?
I agree with not Manny's statement, but your statement that, yes, there isn't necessarily somebody we can point to disprove that statement at this point. So, sure, I guess you can make it. I don't know if I would agree with it, though.
It might be, the more I think of Mike Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan, it might be that they're just the kinds of guys that they'd rather call plays, design plays, sequence plays, and run the team. And they don't want to bring a quarterback from A to B to C to D to E and develop them like a Holmgren or a Walsh or, any number of other coaches you want to point to through the years, that they just want a capable quarterback who's already kind of coached up. Though I think it's a little unfair because if you talk to Steve Young, if we had Steve sitting here,
right,
he would tell you Mike Shanahan had a huge hand in his development. I would counter by saying, Steve, you were 29 or 28 by the time, Mike got there. But he would swear, but Krug, he had a huge hand in helping me develop my game and how I looked at the game. So I'm sure that, you know what I mean? So when we say, oh, they've never developed a quarterback, Steve might, say, hey, you know what? I would push back on that.
The
But
one thing I will say, because I actually agree with what you're saying, and it becomes way more nuanced and complicated, but everybody just likes to put out the definitive, just baseline statements like Shanahan can't do this, this person can't do this. But like you said, there's a lot more to it. I do think the one thing I've noticed kind of with this offense is a lot of these coaches seem to have a lot more success with veteran quarterbacks or quarterbacks who have played a lot and have certain level of experience that can do kind of the rudimentary basics of quarterbacking at somewhat of a standard level. I think that's very, very important. And that's the one thing I don't know yet about the guys that run this offense, whether they can teach somebody to do the rudimentary basics. Because if you have a guy who can do a baseline level of processing, has a baseline level of accuracy, we've seen how much success that Shanahan can have with these different style of quarterbacks because his offense does so much for the quarterback, because the way they run the ball, the way they use the run game, the number of easy completions they manufacture off of screens, off of nakeds, off of bootlegs, the way they manufacture easy chunk plays off of play action that are really, really easy, wide open throws, big window throws. Like the offense does so much for the quarterback. But I also do think there's a baseline expectation that the quarterback needs to execute to be able to get the best of this offense. Like a good example of this to me earlier this year was, and maybe this guy sucks no matter what, but Zach Wilson, Mike White, right? It's not that Mike White's a good quarterback. It's just that Mike White can kind of do the rudimentary things that a quarterback needs to be able to do. And that's why he had success. Whereas Zach Wilson is still the bigger talent of those two players. Perhaps Zach Wilson just sucks and he's never going to realize that talent. But on potential alone, he is the bigger talent of those two players. He just wasn't at a point where he could do the rudimentary basics. So even though he was in a quarterback-friendly system and all of that, he wasn't necessarily ready for that system. Now, we'll find out whether this theory is actually true, because I would love to see Trey Lance actually get to play, because then we'll get to see real development and see, what is actually needed and how the coach will use him. But as of right now, that's just a theory I have that could be something, Larry, but it could also be a whole load of horseshit if we get a little bit more evidence that shows us anything. Yeah.
Kevin Crittenden says, as a very Krueger truther, I don't have an off season. Keep the Vulcan mind meld strong, lads. There you go. Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate the donation. Two questions I want to finish with, and then we'll get on with our weekend. I've, my kid was asking me the other day about the combine and the fact that, that these teams get to interview players. And I think it's 30 players that you have like a certain number of minutes with over the course of the entire week. And you put requests in, and then those players come to you. And every team's different. Some teams request players that they have no interest in drafting. Other teams request players that they feel like there's a gap in their scouting report. Sometimes the other teams want to press certain players on issues they've had, maybe off the field, or they want to know what kind of mindset, or maybe they got a real red flag by the road scout who said, hey man, this guy cannot take any criticism to an extreme where he, like his coach and everybody around him, tiptoes around him. And you got to see if, you guys like this player, but this guy's personality, if you question him in a film session, he's going to, go out to his car and get a piece and, brandish it. I mean, you just never know. I mean, you never know. So I want to ask you, if you were in that room, what do you think's a good question that you'd want to ask somebody at the combine? Would you want to ask them something that you think is universal to winning? Like, what's more important to you, the individual or the team? Things that are like, more like team oriented, or find out his like philosophy of life or philosophy of sharing, or would you just want to hear him tell his story? Sometimes the best stuff that I've gotten out of Niner players in the locker room is when I just go up to him and be like, hey man, where are you from? Tell me a little bit about yourself. And all of a sudden they start going and they start stream of consciousness. And then you get a pretty good idea about who they are, at least what's important to them. Because you're just saying, hey, tell me a little bit about yourself. And then it's so broad a topic that they start telling you their priorities in life without even realizing they're telling you their priorities in life. Like, be like, hey, you go up to, I went up to Ray McLeod. I'm like, hey man, tell me about yourself. And you're like, yeah, man, I got my girl and my son. And, he started talking about his routine and you could tell like that was what was important to him. What question would you want to ask a player at the combine?
Yeah, so this is a very interesting thought exercise, but I think it would be something like what you described. I do think that, the process has become somewhat superficial in a way because everybody is so prepared with the right thing to say
Right.
that
They
it's
know
very difficult to get
they're
something
coached up.
authentic. And that's where I would just like somebody to give me something that's real about themselves, that gives me a better idea of who they are and what means a lot to them. And to me, I don't know. I'm not like the oldest person or the wisest person, so it's not like I have great experience, but from all the positive interactions I've had with people in life, it's typically because we have a similar alignment in just how we see the world and what in terms of ethically what we see is correct and wrong. And usually if there's an alignment there and there's an alignment in terms of goals, you can get along with people and you can have success in any sort of fraction of working together with anyone. And so how you figure that out, I would say you would have to try and draw something real and authentic. And like you suggested about Ray McLeod, where you get him to talk about something that seems normal, but it's important to him. And you start to realize, oh, he's driven by his son. He's driven by his girl. Okay. Like I can understand being driven by
It's
family.
relatable.
Like that's something that's completely relatable and makes sense to me in terms of who that person is. So there's something then, yeah, absolutely. Now, how would I actually capture that? Who knows if I'm even capable of capturing that, but that's what I would like to capture if I was in that situation. Yeah.
I think I would like to talk to guys about, their kind of, especially if they're defensive players, why do you play? What's your motivation? And I'm looking for guys who like to play because they like to play and they like, especially defensive players. I want guys who like to hit. Like to me, like Dre Greenlaw, I went up to him this year and I'm like, hey man, you like to blow people up, don't you? You
Right.
like to really detonate, don't you? And he's like, yeah, yeah.
Jimmy Ward.
He started to smile, and it's like, you know what? That's what I want in my linebackers. I want guys who like to be physical. I want guys who embrace the physicality of the sport, who like to deal out pain, who like to inflict damage. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's like not personal damage. Like you don't want people who are, I want to
Bad
burn the guy's
people.
house down. I like going out there and hitting that guy so hard that, I knock the snot out of his nose. I
Is
mean,
that the
whatever.
kind of player you were, Krug?
I know, but I mean, that's the kind of players I like on defense. And that's the kind of mindset I like on defense, which is there are guys like when you got like the Niners have a room full of defenders
They
that
have
these
those guys
guys,
on offense too. They
what,
seem to have that philosophy of
there's,
just fearless guys who are willing to just inflict pain and be as physical as possible just across their team. Like that seems to be something that, like whatever you asked the question about the combine, right, Krug? Whatever
right.
questions they're asking about this is working because it's not just Greenlaw, right? Alshire is this type of person. Jimmy Ward is like this. Hufanga's like this. Debo Samuel's like this. Kittle's like this. McCaffrey's like this. They have so many different people who are just like the most physical alpha. Yeah, physical with an F. Mike
Physical
Singletary.
with an F.
There he is.
That's a Mike Singletary, I think,
I'd
right?
rather play with 10 guys and get penalized every single play. Well, it's not a
I
penalty, Mike
want
Singletary.
winners. I want winners.
Can't coach with them.
Can't do it.
Can't win
Can't
with
have
them.
them. Can't do it. Oh, I love that. I love that speech. All right, last one. Last one. You're in Chicago.
I
Bears have
am.
the first pick. They got Justin Fields. There's a lot of talk about Jalen Carter. There's Mike Tannenbaum said they should trade Justin Fields and draft Bryce Young, which I'm sure right there, the score in Chicago is blowing up right now over that alone. What do you think? Give me your thumbnail on Chicago. I mean, Do you believe in Fields? Do you think Ryan Poles believes in Fields? Would you believe in Fields? Would you rather go with Bryce Young, Will Levis, CJ Stroud? Should the Bears trade back? What's your spot? I'm reading Atlanta, Indy, Houston, Carolina. I think have
to
all
be all
called
traded out.
about the number one pick. They say there's maybe even a couple more teams
Right.
interested. What
And with the
if you're
Jalen
Ryan Poles? He's a young guy, had a really good draft last year, really good. I thought. What would you do? What would you do? You want to draft Bryce Young? You want to trade Justin Fields? Where, I mean, if Bryce Young is really Aaron Rodgers, maybe you'd rather have him than Justin Fields. But how would you trade Justin Fields based on the experience, based on some of the, things that he's shown in a short amount of time? So crystallize the Bears for us. And what's the talk in town? Are people going to lose their S if they trade Fields? Are they going to be happy if they go quarterback, unhappy? That's where this draft starts with the Chicago Bears. And I think they're riveting. To me, I'm riveted to what they're going to do.
Yeah, and I actually think it is a complicated question because to me, I actually think Bryce Young's a better quarterback than Justin Fields. And I love Justin Fields coming out. I think Bryce Young's the better player of the two. But then when you actually talk about Bryce Young in Chicago, to me, that's a horrible idea.
Because of the weather and the arm and the
weather
wind.
is real. Yeah, that is real. There's games in October where you can't throw the football. Like to me, Justin Fields is the perfect quarterback for the Bears, who they want to be philosophically. The Bears want to win through defense and run game. They want to run the football. They want to be physically committed to running the football. It's what they do well. Justin Fields enhances that. He might be the best individual ball carrier in the NFL right now, Larry. How many times did we see Justin Fields run for a 60, 70-yard touchdown last year? It felt like there was a stretch of 4 or 5 weeks where it happened every week. How many other ball carriers other than Tyreek Hill were we saying that about last year? Like, that's how special he was with his legs. So if you ask me, like, in a neutral situation, I do think that Bryce Young is the better player, and I would think, okay, move off of Fields, go with Bryce Young. But in this particular situation, it doesn't make sense for me for Bryce Young to the Bears. So I would 100% stick with Fields. I think that's what they're going to do. And I think it got more difficult because while trading down was an option, Jalen Carter always was also just like, okay, if we're not getting the perfect trade we want, at least we're getting a player who looks like Quinnen Williams 2.0 that really can be an all-pro defensive difference maker. And now with whatever happened with that, the racing, the reckless driving, all of that with Jalen Carter, now I don't know. Maybe Will Anderson. I haven't studied Will Anderson. The reason I know Jalen Carter is because I studied Jordan Davis and Devontae Wyatt and Trayvon Walker last year, and 88 used to be the one that actually flashed the most of all of those guys when you used to watch them. And so I have, or not, yeah, excuse me. I called him Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter. That's how I'm kind of familiar with his game a little bit more. Maybe Will Anderson is that guy. I'm not sure. He didn't seem to test off the charts either. So I'll watch the film and maybe he is that guy. But right now, I think the Bears are kind of they only really win in this spot if they're able to trade down because Bryce Young does not make sense in Chicago to me. And if you take Jalen Carter out of the equation, I don't know if there's a number one overall pick worthy player in this draft either.
Will Anderson's interesting. He's a great player, but I don't know that he looks like a true edge rusher. You know what I mean? He's really athletic. He had a great career, but is he he doesn't seem like a dominating edge rusher to me.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't. I have to watch more of him.
Is it just a natural? Is it just you don't feel like there's a natural thing? There's just a natural way to the way he pass rushes.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I don't see that body lean. I don't see that bendability. I see a guy who is a dominant speed factor off the edge, but I don't see a lot of moves. I don't see a lot of.
So you see an athlete. You see a
Jadeveon
Clowney rather than a Nick Bosa.
Miss. I don't see a lot of engagement. Like with Will Anderson, I don't see him like an offensive tackle that he's like driving backwards, and I see him beating guys out of their stance. but I don't see too many times where he's just like kind of leaning into them. And I don't know. It's there's something about him that makes me think that he's kind of more of a stack backer than a edge guy. I don't know. He's very productive. I think he could be a 4-3 outside backer. I think he could be a 3-4 inside backer. I don't know about edge player. It just seems like he's not 6'6", he's 6'3". He's not 270, he's 250. I mean, is he
So you
Von
think
Miller?
this is Vic
Maybe
Beasley?
he's Von Miller. I don't know. I
So
don't
you
know. He
think
doesn't
this is Vic Beasley? That's what I'm hearing.
I don't like him. To me, that makes me nervous. And the Jalen Carter thing makes me nervous too. If I were the Bears, I think I would trade back, into that 8, 9, 10 range and choose between guys like Tyree Wilson, Miles Murphy,
Here's
maybe.
the issue I have with that, Larry, and this is why I think the Bears' problem is more complex than what we think it is. I don't look at any of these quarterbacks as the kind of quarterbacks I want to trade up to one to go take. Like Bryce Young's size to me is scary enough where I would question if I was at one, I would still take a chance because the film is so good. But I would question how much belief I would have to trade up to one and give up even more assets for a guy whose size is, we're talking about outlier amongst outlier because it's not just the height. The weight is really a question. What is he, 185 pounds? That's
They
15
said he's
pounds
going to
more
weigh
than me.
200 pounds. Yeah,
Oh,
he said today he's going to weigh in at 200 pounds. I don't know. He played at about 190, they say.
okay, the 200 pounds does mean a lot to me, Larry. It does. That rounded 200 number makes me feel a little bit better because it's a little bit closer to Kyler Murray and Drew and Russell Wilson there. But even then, yeah, that's scary to me. And then Stroud, I just have questions with the way he manages the pocket and how good the protection was at Ohio State. To me, the best thing he does is how accurately he throws the ball. But that's not enough for me to look at him as a 100%, especially when you look at contrast Stroud to what you saw in the bowl game versus what you saw for the rest of the season. I don't look at him as, oh, I'm going to trade up to one and go take that guy.
Yeah.
Definitely not Levis. And then Anthony Richardson, the sample size, it's a scary small sample size. The talent is real. To me, he's the most physically gifted quarterback in terms of pure gifts that's come out since Josh Allen. That's how good I think the skills are. And in terms of actually playing, like there's moments where the processing is actually like pretty good and advanced. And there's moments where he's very, very advanced in how he manages the pocket. It's a little bit Trey Lance-esque from that standpoint, where the sample is low, but there's moments of deeper sophistication in the quarterback play. But the throwing and the inconsistent ball placement and inconsistent accuracy to me is quite nervous, where I don't know about trading up to one to take that guy. So that's where I think the Bears could be stuck here, Larry. And that's where the Jalen Carter situation to me might have screwed them even more. Because like if you're stuck and you're taking Jalen Carter, like to me, I wouldn't be so mad if I'm the Bears, right? Trading down is perfect, but if you're walking away with Jalen Carter, it's not like the worst thing in the world. But if you feel like you can't draft Jalen Carter at one because of this situation, Larry, gosh, you're in a shitty situation to have the number one overall pick.
Oh, and let's be honest about Anthony Richardson. He's really a 1-year guy.
Right.
2020, he played 3 games. He only threw 2 passes. 2021, he played 7 games and he only, he completed 59%, 38 of 64, 6 touchdowns, 5 picks. This last year, 2022, was really his only full year. He played 12 games. He completed 53% of his passes, 17 touchdowns, 9 picks. It's he did run 103 times this year for 9 more touchdowns. He's got 12 rushing touchdowns career, but he only has 22 career starts, you know? So I don't
He
know.
has what, 350, I think, college throws?
Right. 393.
Yeah. I mean, the talent is there. Don't get me wrong. Like, he's going to go in the top 15 picks. But when we're talking about the Bears, you got to trade up for 1-to-1 basically because you believe in one of these quarterbacks. And to me, each one of these quarterbacks has enough of a question mark where if you're asking me to trade up to the number one overall pick, which means you're throwing in assets other than taking the quarterback itself, like Larry, that's scary to me. I don't know how you feel, but I don't know if there's necessarily a quarterback that I just want to go up there to get. And that's where the Bears situation, like, what if they're stuck? Like, what if they can't trade back? They don't like the offers they're getting. Nobody's really sure about which quarterback they want to trade up for. And Jalen Carter's situation is to the point that they don't feel like they can take him either. What do you do there?
Okay, you got the first pick in the draft. I think you have to get real tough about what kind of trade you're willing to accept. Like, give you an example. If the Colts call trying to move from 4 to 1, I want Quentin Nelson.
You
I
want
want
Quentin Nelson?
what's that?
But he's coming off the worst year of his career.
I
He's
don't
been
care. I
banged
still
up
want
the
him.
last 2 years, and he's paid so much money. Is that what you would want, or would you want more for future firsts and future picks if you're the Bears?
No, I want an absolute difference maker, and I think Quentin Nelson is that guy. He's not old. I mean, he's still in his prime. I'd want the 4th pick, Quentin Nelson, and probably more than that. But that's where it would
Okay.
start. As far as Carolina, if Carolina called, I probably want J.C. Horn. I want to.
Okay, let's reverse that though. Then, if you're Carolina or the Colts, is there a quarterback that you feel like has enough things that make you certain enough to give up, your one young blue chip player? Like JC Horn is kind of Carolina's one young cheap rookie contract blue chip player right now. Do you give that up for Bryce Young or
I mean,
CJ Stroud?
Carolina's
Like,
a
is there
new
a quarterback
regime.
that makes you feel that way, Larry? I'm asking. I'm not asking for those teams. I'm asking in that scenario. You're the GM. Do these quarterbacks give you enough certainty to make that type of a move for them?
No, I don't have a conviction on any of these guys on that level. I like Bryce Young. Um, I don't know about CJ Stroud. I love Will Levis as a thrower, but I like him more in the 20s than I do in the top 5. I like Anthony Richardson as just a future, take a flyer on him because he's that crazy athletic, but he's so inexperienced. I wouldn't feel comfortable taking him in the top 10 either. So, yeah, I don't
I'm
like
with you. Like, to
this
me,
these quarterbacks. I don't, it's risky. It's really
I
risky.
I 100% agree. Like, to me, if Bryce Young was 6'3", then shoot, I don't even think Chicago's open for business. If Bryce Young's 6'3", they probably say goodbye to Justin Fields and just take Bryce Young. And there you go. But if Bryce Young's 6'3" and Chicago still chooses to keep with Justin Fields, like, that's a quarterback. A 6'3" Bryce Young is a quarterback I'd 100% be ready to trade something for to go up and get the opportunity to take it one. But if you're talking about 5'10", Larry says he will be 200 pounds. Bryce Young, 5'10 and a half. No way. No way I want to trade up that much. As special as the film is, the size, man.
At
Gosh.
data says Larry's been on all day. Freaking machine.
Seriously.
It's been a busy day. I'm going to let you go, man. But I will say this, the one thing about the draft is you got to look at the draft in historical context.
Okay.
You notice the one thing that we always do, we look to the draft? Ahead. We're always looking ahead to the draft, How many people spend time looking back at the draft? Very
You?
few. Very few. And NFL teams do. And when you look back at the draft, you realize that the miss rate is almost 1 for 1.
Right.
And there's going to be like half the guys in round 1 that you love, half of them are going to bust. So you really have to kind of be very circumspect when you look at it and just acknowledge that let's just say the majority of these first round picks are not going to hit. They're going to be a bust.
Right.
So you have to go figure out which guys are the busts, and if they're going to bust, why are they going to bust? Some guys are going to bust because of bad character. Some guys are going to bust because of injury. Some guys are going to bust because they were over evaluated based on a trait. So ultimately it's about finding out the essence of the player and trying to figure out who are the real players. And I'll give you an example. I don't know who the real players are in the draft, but I'll give you a few of them that I know that are real. And there's not a lot of them, but I like this. I like the Skoronski O tackle from Northwestern. Like him a lot. I think he's really, really good. I like Michael Mayer, the tight end from Notre Dame. Really believe in him.
We know
Lucas
that one.
Van Ness from Iowa, the D lineman. I really like Lucas. I think Van Ness is a really good player. I watched a lot of them.
How about
Kalijah Cansey.
Kincaid?
Dalton Kincaid, very solid player. I wouldn't take him in round 1 at 240 pounds. I think he's more of like a round 2, round 3 guy, but very solid tight end, no doubt. Kalijah Cansey from Pittsburgh, kind of odd size, 6'1", 280, but he's a hell of a player. But I mean, there's a bunch of guys. Antonio Johnson from the safety from A&M. I really like him. And there's a
Brian
couple more.
Branch,
Who's that? Brian
the
Branch?
Alabama safety.
Haven't seen enough of him.
I haven't seen him either. That's just a name I've seen going around. So you threw a safety, and I just wanted to add to the discussion.
Robinson. I believe in Bijan Robinson.
Oh, okay. There's one, Larry. I think he would be a top 10 pick if we were drafting 5 years ago. I think he's Robinson? A special player. Yeah, I would take him. I would take him. Even if you'd only get 5 years of Bijan Robinson with running back attrition, I think the player is so talented that those 5 years would be worth the draft pick, even if he never plays a down with the second contract on your team.
Yeah. So you just never know. Derek Hall, the edge rusher from Auburn. I love him. Love him. He's like a D Ford. He
ran really well, right?
Oh, I think he ran great, but not only that, his agility drills and the whole deal. I mean, Derek Hall from Auburn. They're saying
he's going to be a first round pick?
No, they're saying 63 overall, maybe.
So right where Drake Jackson went.
Yeah. And this guy's the real deal. Love him. All right, man. Hey,
is he Lemonnier or is he D Ford?
He's D Ford. He's D Ford.
Okay,
he's not Lemonnier. I take it to the bank.
I just had to make sure there because I remember I didn't know much about Lemonnier, and I remember when the Niners drafted him because he had such a great workout throughout the draft process. Mike Mayock was like, "I'm so surprised Corey Lemonnier is still on the board, blah, blah, blah." And then it turned out he just couldn't disengage from blocks. He would just get locked in and he would just be stuck there. Despite he had an Adonis frame. He had
looks like Tarzan, plays like Jane.
Yeah, there you go. He had
Charles Fleming, Byron Young from Tennessee looked amazing. He did. He looked so amazing that he'll be probably a late first round pick. So all right, man, you got big plans for the weekend? What's
No, I do not. Just decompress, relax a little bit, go home. I was planning to go home tomorrow, spend some time with family, and then I'll be back, of course, on Tuesday with you, and then Thursday, Friday, right back here. Dang, we were talking about keeping it short, and look at us. We went an hour and 18 minutes just like that. I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. I'm sometimes in awe when I talk about the fact that we can just, at least it feels like this for me. Maybe for other people, it feels like a very long time. But for me, I feel like we're killing time quickly. And I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing that every show just seems to, yeah.
Imagine what we'll have to talk about when there's actually stuff to talk about.
Oh, gosh. If Brock Purdy actually has a surgery or if Trey Lance actually recovers. Oh, if somebody gets traded, are you kidding?
If somebody gets traded, I may just keep talking. Just keep talking for days.
I'd be upset, I think, if one of these guys gets traded at this point.
Yeah. Well, all I'll say, because there isn't a fair trade coming back for Trey if you are like me and you think he's going to be great down the road. If you think he's a bust, yeah, you know what? I bet you there's probably some very attractive trades. That's what makes the Niners, the one thing we don't know, we don't know how much they value him or don't value him. And we're going to find out or not, I guess we may not, but my guess is if they value him just they're going to trade him because there'll be somebody else who values him higher and will give them something good. If they value him as an elite player, then he's probably going to stick around, and because I can't imagine anybody's going to give them a crazy offer. But
gosh, I would be nervous because if you're thinking of it that way, I'd have to assume other people have to think that if he's available 4 games into after trading that much for him, something had to have gone astray or awry for you to be looking to trade him. That would scare the crap out of me. It's been 4 games. What could have changed? You believed in him so much that it basically cost 3 first-round picks to draft Trey Lance. And he's been unbelievable. The human being has been unbelievable. That's what they keep telling us, Larry. We're seeing the human being. We saw how great he was on the Rich Eisen interview, how honest he was, how real he was about the situation. You don't see that He's my age. I'm not that realistic about my life, especially not when it's going well. I'll tell you that, let alone in a public place. I'm not even honest to myself in the mirror when it's not going great sometimes. So he was honest in public. So that lets you know all you need to know about him. Like, how does 4 games get us here? How does 4 games?
I know. It would be so, but I mean, literally, who's he been compared to? James Wiseman, who just got dealt way prematurely. James Wiseman.
You think it was premature?
Oh, I do. I think James Wiseman's a better player than
James Wiseman makes me feel
GP2.
so much better about that trade as a Pistons fan. I was very down on it.
Really? Because you like Saddiq Bey.
I
like Saddiq Bey too.
I like Saddiq Bey and everything. I mean, everything I saw of what's his name? James Wiseman, and everything I was reading about James Wiseman. And then I happen to follow a lot of people who are Warriors fans, right? Because I primarily use my Twitter for 49ers stuff. And it sounded like it was just, he was really, really bad. He was really soft as in terms of playing with toughness, playing on defense and stuff like that. And I was like, a big like that to Detroit. Come on.
There is a marshmallow factor with Wiseman. I'll give you that. There's a chance he's a marshmallow. And if anybody sees him, don't tell him I said that. All right. Vish, good stuff, man. Have a good weekend. We'll talk to you next week.
I'll see you next week, Larry. Had a great time as always. And you take some rest. How about that? How about only 10 streams tomorrow, not 11?
Yeah, exactly. Have a good weekend, bro.
You too.
Later, man. The great Vish Kumaran. All right, we are brought to you by Pig in a Pickle. Check them out. 2 locations. They're in Emeryville, in the Emeryville Public Marketplace. Open Wednesday through Sunday. They're open 7 days a week in Marin County in Corte Madera. Get the brisket, man. The brisket chili, the brisket, the potato chips, they're amazing. The ribs, the white cheddar mac and cheese, the collard greens. Oh, it's all great stuff. The brisket chili is second to none. You got to try it because he takes real brisket and he just puts it in his chili. And it's like the consistency of brisket and chili is just so damn good. So damn good. And if you don't believe me, check out this video from our good friends at Pig in a Pickle. Also, big thanks to Casey Bateman and the good people at Telmetrics for being the sponsor of today's show. You say Telmetrics, what is it? Well, it's TELMETRIX.co is their website. And if you're if you're some guy who played hoops this weekend and you screwed up your shoulder or your ankle and you need to kind of figure out how to rehab it, but you don't want to go to the doctor, you don't want to go to any kind of urgent care, and you just want to try to self-medicate at home with some common sense, check this out, telmetrics.co, TELMETRIX.co. Here's another word for Telmetrics. And last but certainly not least, special thanks to a sponsor of today's show, New York Style Italian Sausage. Man, I love New York Style Italian sausage. The Italian mild is my favorite. The Italian spicy is really, really good on pizza. They've got chorizo, breakfast sausage, New York Style Italian sausage, often imitated, never equaled. Check them out and all of their products at their website, NewYorkStyleSausage.com.
So New York Style Sausage was started over 70 years ago. We are the largest producer of fresh Italian sausage on the West Coast.
What makes our sausage in New York style is really the recipe came from back east, from New York, from Connecticut.
If you look at all of our labels, there's maximum 4 or 5 ingredients, which we're really proud of.
There's no preservatives, no MSG, fresh in, fresh out.
The pork comes in fresh, goes out fresh. There's never any freezing throughout the process. We've always used fine quality cuts. We're never going to deter from that. It's one of the reasons why our sausage is so good. I guarantee you put our sausage up against anybody else's from a flavor standpoint, no one will beat it, hands down.
And do yourself a favor and do me a favor. Go buy a package of the New York style Italian sausage. Guaranteed you will love it. Guaranteed.
All right, coming down the home stretch on the live stream. Busy Friday. Not coming on tonight after Warriors Pelicans. I'm going to watch it, but we're not going to do the whole post game tonight. I think I'm going to chill out. We've had a busy day. Thanks to Ryan Hensley, Grant Cohn, Jack Hammer, Vish Kumaran. A lot of Niner talk today. And we'll have more videos coming out from the Combine and some of the observations from the Combine. If you can, hit like and subscribe. If you hit like, that helps the algorithm help more people find our live streams and videos. And then if you hit subscribe, you'll get alerted on your phone if you hit the notification bell every time we go live. And we are at 14,730 subscribers, and we're closing in on 1 week. I think our 1 year anniversary. We started this channel on, I think, March the 10th of last year. And it's now March the 3rd of this year. So we are coming up on our 1 year anniversary, and we're about roughly 270 subscribers away from 15,000. So help us get to 15,000 if you can. Also, thanks to everybody who joins the club. We've got about 100 club members right now. We appreciate the club members, and we will produce some outstanding individual content specialized for club members only. Terry, is it Tammy? Tammy McDonald says, this guy makes you an offer you can't refuse. Thank you, Tammy. Damn it, Larry. MF, happy anniversary, Larry. Thank you, MF. It's been a pleasure. Dave Ronald, Krug, SI Frosh football, and then a wrap. Yeah. Can you believe that? One and done. I played a little hoops, a little lacrosse, but 1 year of football, and that was it. All right. Hey, that does it for us. Thank you to everybody in the chat. Thanks to everybody who's enjoyed the live streams throughout the day. Thanks to our sponsors. Thanks especially to Vish Kumaran. And I hope everybody has a great Friday night. Until tomorrow, we'll have more content in the days, weeks, and months ahead on the Krug Show. Until then, we are out.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for. Here for whatever you bring me, getting handled. I answer to no one, I don't need to hassle. Yeah, we ain't never fall back. Hold up.